before the Joshua fight that Andy Ruiz, who we promoted from the beginning, was a good fighter, had fast hands, good feet, and was very courageous. But he didn't figure with Joshua because he had no punch. We put him in with ham and egg guys. Look at his record, and he couldn't get rid of him. He had no punch that really had an effect. And looking at that fight, now I saw Joshua fight Parker. I saw Joshua on television with Klitschko. The Joshua I saw on June 1st in Madison Square Garden was an imposter. It wasn't Joshua. It was somebody else. From what he was acting like before the fight, how he carried himself in the fight, that was not Anthony Joshua. I don't want to take anything away from Andy Ruiz, but the way I look at it, he didn't beat Joshua.
Wow. This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I let you guys listen to a segment of Bob Arum's latest interview with IFL TV, and he was, of course, we know, if you didn't know, Bob Arum was the promoter of Andy Ruiz before he went to PBC side of things, and he was explaining that Andy Ruiz really didn't have a punch. They put him in there with guys that were groomed almost to get knocked out or have been knocked out before, and Andy Ruiz couldn't do it. Now, he said he was a good fighter. He said he had fast hands. He said that he was a courageous fighter, but he couldn't get those lower opposition guys out of there, okay? So he goes on to say the Anthony Joshua that he saw was an imposter. So I know how people say things and explain things, and I'm not an idiot, and I know how to read between the lines. And what Bob Arum was saying, basically, that something was wrong with Anthony Joshua. The Joshua that we saw Saturday night wasn't Anthony Joshua. He called him an imposter. He said that was an imposter because he's seen Anthony Joshua fight Klitschko. He's seen Anthony Joshua fight Parker. And that particular Joshua didn't show up Saturday night for whatever reason, but he did allude to a reason. He said, hey, that wasn't the true guy. So he goes on to say, I don't want to take anything away from Andy Ruiz, but he said that the Joshua didn't show up. So the question is, what was wrong with Joshua? Okay, he gave you a comparison of the fighter that he had, Andy Ruiz. He couldn't punch. Then he gave you an example of the normal Anthony Joshua that fought before and did courageous things by getting off the canvas and knocking out Klitschko. But both of these guys were two different men. So one thing he did leave out, okay, he said that Andy Ruiz could punch or couldn't punch. So he went from couldn't punch to all of a sudden knocking out Anthony Joshua. So he didn't say that now Andy Ruiz can now punch or found new forms of strength. He just said that the Anthony Joshua that showed up was an imposter, and that wasn't not Anthony Joshua. See, there's a difference, okay? If you can learn things, but learning how to punch is not one of them. You either got to punch if you don't. As long as he's been fighting since he was 6 years old when he first came into the gym, Andy Ruiz, right? And that was one of his flaws. So that's just like Jarrell Miller getting knocked out by Tyson Fury. You know what I mean? Hey, but Bob Arum's really trying to say that something was wrong with Anthony Joshua. He just didn't come out and say it, but he said it if you read between the lines. Now, it's strange to see someone in an opposition like Bob Arum say something like this. And I'm going to tell you why. Bob said it was stupid, because I reported it already, did a video on it. It was stupid to put him back in there with Ruiz. Well, if you feel that that wasn't Joshua that night and something was wrong with him, why would you be against a rematch or immediate rematch? You know, because he blasts Eddie Hearn for not being a boxing guy, because he's supposed to know the difference between throwing him in there with a guy again in 6 months, right? You don't do that. But because, you know, he'll never be the same and all this and that. Now he does an interview and says, well, hey, that wasn't Joshua anyway. Well, obviously you're trying to make everyone believe that something was wrong with Joshua, just like a lot of people are believing, right? So if everybody's believing that, why not have a rematch? So you're saying there was something wrong with Joshua. That wasn't Joshua. That was the imposter Joshua. So guess what? The real Joshua needs to show up in the rematch, right? That's what I'm hearing from this interview. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're saying that, okay, something was wrong, something was off. That wasn't Joshua, it was an imposter. So, you know what? We need to see, by default, we need to see the real Joshua. The Joshua that doesn't have all these rumors circulating around him in this fight. Things before the fight. You know, bruises and cuts. Sparring 8 days before the fight. Shit like that. You don't do that anyway. All right? So this whole card had fail written all over it from the beginning, from the from even the opponent. Okay? And you know, Bob Arum saying that wasn't him, and I don't know if maybe that's his way of trying to shun Andy Ruiz, because, you know, he's with PBC now. You know what I mean? The question you ask yourself is, would he be having the same type of reaction or making these type of interviews, and if he was still with him in his promotional company? If Andy Ruiz was still with Bob Arum, would he be making these interviews? That's the question I asked myself. You know what I mean? Because he was like, you know, of course, it's easy to, you know, to cover up or to patch up something you already said. If you said something derogatory about a guy, no, he couldn't punch. He had fast hands, but he couldn't get him out of there. We knew he didn't have punching power. You know, something was wrong with Joshua. That was an imposter. Oh, but taking nothing away from Andy Ruiz. I just wonder if he would have been that guy. If this would have still been the same story if he would have still been with Top Rank. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about Bob Arum's statements. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.